morning, everyone. Welcome to Talladega as we prepare for the 14th race of Season 57 of the Rolling Thunder Gaming Talladega Challenge Series. Tonight, folks, it is playoff race number 4, elimination race number 2, outside of next week's season finale where we will crown a champion. Maybe no other race this season will have as much prevalence as to who's going to hoist that championship trophy as tonight's 66 lapper. We've got 8 drivers that are still in the hunt for the championship. One, as we know, has already moved on to the Final Four. That was Jeremy Jeffries picking up the checkered flag last week. But 7 drivers here tonight will fight for the final 3 positions to battle for the championship next week. And oh yeah, by the way, we've got another 24 drivers that are in the field, and they just want to end out the season with either their first checkered flag of the season, maybe for some their second checkered flag of the season, and for quite a number of them, their first checkered flag either in a long while or maybe of their Tally Challenge career. It's going to be a lot of fun to see what happens here this evening. I'm Seth Cole, flying solo here tonight. Michael should be back in the booth next week for the season finale, but going to bring you all the action of tonight's race from Talladega Super Speedway. Going to give you a little bit of an overlook of who to watch here tonight with a championship opportunity hanging in the balance. Jeremy Jeffries, as mentioned, he could kind of put his feet up here tonight. He could help somebody be able to win, or if he wanted to, he could start and park. He's moving on to the Final Four, regardless of what happens to him here tonight. But for the other 7 drivers, it looks like this. Chuck McClure comes into this race as the overall points leader of the 8 drivers. He currently has a 22-point cushion over the cut line driver. We'll get to that driver in just a moment. Rodney Sullins, he's in a tie for second with Jeremy Jeffries. Jeffries already locked in. Sullins is currently 14, make that 15 points ahead of the cut line. And then Brian Schilling right now holds on to that 4th and final transfer spot into the championship battle next week. He's the guy everybody's going to be gunning for that's below the cut line. He's only got 4 points over said cut line driver, which is Joe DeSpirito, the multi-time champion. DeSpirito only 4 points from being able to make his way into the Final Four. Bob Seminara currently sits in 6th. He is a total of 5 points behind that 4th in the standings cut line. In 7th is Tim Novsker. He is only 11 points behind that cut line. And then the final driver, we mentioned this storyline even as early as 3 weeks ago. Grant Wesley, the defending champion, we knew he was going to miss out on last week. He was at the Gateway, I believe it was the St. Louis Dirt Nationals, if I recall correctly. Hope he had a fun time there, but the 3-time winner this season has a tall task here tonight. He is, by all accounts, in a must-win situation as he comes into this race currently 24 points behind said cut line 4th in the standings, and it looks like we've got a total of 31 drivers that are taking the green flag here tonight. We know just how closely bunched our playoff drivers have been on track here this season, so it's going to be very difficult to make that up points-wise. You're more than likely going to have to win if you're Grant Wesley to be a back-to-back champion. But let's bear in mind, too, of the 3 playoff races we've run so far this season, Grant has won 2 of them, the first 2 playoff races back in the round of what was then 11. Let's take a look at the starting lineup for tonight's event, as we saw a couple of drivers elect to drop to the back of the pack, but the starting lineup based off the random qualifying results were as follows. Bernie Mobbs gets the pole here tonight in that number 31 leaf filter Dodge. Manny D was scheduled to be on the outside of the front row. Looks like he has dropped to the back. Bobby Farrell rolls off 3rd, John Godfrey in 4th, and Ken Roberts completes the top 5. Jessica Shelton in 6th. 7th, Robbie Nisus. Cy Jones in 8th. Tom Dixon in 9th. And Bob Dixon, brother, will start alongside him in 10th. Rodney Sullins is in 11th. Brian Schilling in 12th. Bob Seminara 13th. Milt Surratt in 14th. And Tim Novsker will complete the top 15. 16th will be Jason Scheck. Terry Bombard 17th. Kyle Lawson in 18th. Wiley Coate 19th, and Chuck McClure completes the top 20. It's Greg Palmer in 21st, Kelly Causey 22nd, Glenn Harris will be 23rd, Grant Wesley, the must-win situation driver, is 24th on the grid, Josh Metallic in 25th, David Cannon will be 26th, 27th, Doug Hewlick, Joe DeSpirito deep in the field as he'll be 28th, Jeremy Jeffries in 29th, Donnie Garrett is 30th, and Mark Paglia will start shotgun on the field in the 31 truck field. 66 laps of racing till we know the 3 drivers that will join Jeremy Jeffries in the battle for the championship next week here at Talladega. Bernie Mobb's going to lead us down, and we are green flag racing here this evening. Chevy and a Dodge on the top, a Chevy and a Ford on the inside. Which line will prevail? It looks like it may be the inside line. Godfrey might be clear on Bernie Mobbs. I think he could have slid up there off of 2 if he so chose, but instead elects to stay on the inside line with Bobby Farrell. Now we got a third line forming as Brian Schilling will jump to the top side. He's going to try and get around Cy Jones, but nobody went with him. Milt Surratt leaves him out to dry. You got company coming, though. That's Jason Scheck. I believe that's Kyle Lawson's 97, Tim Knopfsker's 088. So a third line is forming here through the tri-oval. As on the apron a little there was John Godfrey. Got a little loose, almost up into the 31. He'll hang on to it, though, and he will lead the first lap of this race as they're stacked in 3 wide, now 4 wide. Through 1 and 2, Shelton saw that high line coming, wanted to get up there. They take her and put her in the middle with Cy Jones. Things gonna be really tight here off of 2 as now Schilling gets into the wall. Scheck's around into Milt Surratt, who gets airborne. Scheck is up and over. The caution's gonna wave for the first time here tonight at Talladega. The big one has struck early as we had 2-3 cars up and over, and a lot of torn up machines here in the early going. Don't know yet if any playoff contenders were collected, as Jason Scheck and Milt Surratt were the first 2 that I saw that went up in the air, and the caution is out. John Godfrey, the leader here under this yellow. I would have to assume, our camera angle wasn't the best down the back straightaway, but I would have to assume that the 4 wide and the contact between Shelton and Schilling off of turn 2 might have led to maybe some stack up or something on the backstretch, which caused that Lake Speed throwback number 1 to go around and clip the 80 of Milt Surratt. Let's go back and see if we can document what happened, and of course as well, maybe more importantly, see if any of our playoff contenders were caught up in this, because we did have a number of them, as I mentioned on the grid, that started close to the rear of the field, Despirito and Chuck McClure amongst those. And it appears that Jason Scheck's not even going to make it to the first 5 laps of this race. He's already in the garage. So what happens here? We're going to focus on the 1 truck. We'll try and get another camera angle here as well. But watch the 48 and the 4. They get together right there. They're stacked up. Oh, and it looks like the stack up there, Kyle Lawson got into the back of Jason Scheck. Oh, man, big hit there for Bob Dixon. And you see back there, I don't know if you can tell, up in the top left, that is Chuck McClure in the 17. He was involved. Made some contact with Mark Paglia and Doug Hewlick. So we did have a playoff contender involved. Manny D back there was actually riding the outside wall, maybe trying to scrub off speed to not get involved in this incident. Take another look here. As soon as the 1 got into the 80 of Milt Surratt, Surratt went up and over. I mean, that was very quick, no reaction time. Yeah, the bumpers just weren't square there, and maybe the 97 of Lawson was carrying more speed than Scheck. That's what sends him around there. Certainly the contact up ahead checked them all up. Wiley Coate, Terry Bombard amongst those that were involved also. We know Bob Dixon was involved as he got hit by the spinning Jason Scheck. Try and get an aerial look here. See if we can get a better idea of just how much stack up there was. We're going to go back to the middle of 1 and 2. Watch this 4 wide. Watch the truck in that 4 wide, the 3rd one up there, Shelton. Little contact there with Schilling, and you can just see the stack up there. Yeah, you had the 088 of Knopfsker into the back of Lawson as well, who then got into the back of Jason Scheck. So there was a lot of chain reaction bumping going on right there. And unfortunately, the bumpers, I guess, just were just a little bit off center. If they had been centered, you might have maybe gotten away with not having a caution fly here. But just that slight little off center, I think, is what sent the one truck around. Let's go on board with one of our playoff contenders who was involved, Chuck McClure. See if we can find out just how big a hit he took, how bad the damage might be for the multi-time winner this season. Wow. What a camera shot there. A hit from behind. I don't know if that was Hewlick or Pagley that might have gotten it, but really, if any contact, it was to the back end of the truck. He didn't really make any contact with the front even after he got spun. Tremendous job of getting on the brakes to avoid Sheck as he was flipping almost onto his hood. Onto McClure's hood, that is. Boy, he avoided disaster right there. That was a nice job by Chuck McClure to keep his hopes of advancing into the Final Four alive. McClure is a former champ. He knows how to get it done. He knows how to make it to the dance. That right there might, if he wins the championship next week, we might go back and look at this race and look at that amazing avoidance by Truck 17. That might be the turning point of him winning the championship or not winning the championship. So we've got the lights still on atop our pace truck. Document the drivers that came to pit road. Pretty much all but the top 8 have been on pit lane. A couple of drivers towards the rear of the field have come down pit road for a second pit stop to maybe top off the fuel tank. Manny D, Chuck McClure amongst those. Drivers that have not pit at this point include race leader John Godfrey, Bobby Farrell, Bernie Mobbs, Ken Roberts, Rodney Sullins, Bob Seminara, and Joe DeSpirito. Remember, DeSpirito started close to the rear of the field. He was 28th. So this caution and him staying out gains him some good track position. Glenn Harris, like he will be the highest of the drivers that pit. Restarting in 9th, Grant Wesley is going to complete the top 10. We should get the lights out top the pace truck this next time by. Of course, next week, it is our season finale for season 57 of the RTG Tally Challenge Series. Hope you'll join us for that. Green flag will be at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but then we got a special RTG Christmas race that's coming up. You'll see these drivers and several others that have taken part in the other series that run here under the RTG banner, including the Barebones series, the Aero 88 series, the RTR Cup series. They'll all be taking part in the RTG Christmas special event. That's going to be on Monday, December 19th. So be sure to tune into that. I might be wrong. I'll have the confirmation next week, but I believe we are racing at a winterized Michigan for the Christmas race. So that should be a lot of fun. See these drivers out there. I mean, a lot of people consider Auto Club in Michigan like a super speedway, so a lot of these drivers here that we're used to seeing race week after week in the Tally Challenge could be some of the favorites to watch. That is indeed if it is going to be that racetrack. Again, I'll get the confirmation and we'll find out next week where the venue exactly is going to be, but I believe it's going to be Michigan. As we've got our lights out atop the pace truck. What the heck is going on there? Oh, I think Bernie Mobbs is actually trying to get down to the inside because he is the third place driver, but he nearly hooked the right rear of Bobby Farrell, so that could have been a little sketchy there. John Godfrey, since he's the leader, he gets lane choice, and he is going to elect the top line here with Ken Roberts as his drafting partner. We saw at the initial start of this race as well, Bernie Mobbs, he elected to start on the top line. We'll see if that's going to be a running trend here tonight of the race leader choosing the top rather than the bottom. Again, mentioned Jason Sheck out of the race after his wild ride on the back straightaway in the early going. Is the only driver back behind the wall. The remaining 30 drivers are still running and are on the lead lap. Got a lot of playoff drivers that elected to take track position over fuel. About half our playoff drivers up here inside of the top 10. Sullins, Seminara, Despirito, and Wesley. Remember, for Grant Wesley, it is a must-win situation. Not necessarily a must-win situation for a couple of those others, but certainly a win can fix everything. Espirito, Seminara, and Novsker, they have to at least be gunning for a top 5, if not a trip to victory lane here, to point their way in. The green flag's about to fly once more here at Talladega. One driver that we're going to have to keep our eye on as far as whether he is up to speed or not is going to be that 4 of Brian Schilling. He's at the tail end of the field. Remember, he's the one that Shelton made the contact with, got into the wall a little bit with the right side. It didn't look like it was a hard enough hit to cause any aero damage, but it is certainly something to follow up considering the fact that Schilling came into this race as the cut line driver. Saw some slicing and dicing there just outside the top 10. I think it was Tom Dixon jumping up to the top line. That inside line doesn't look all that steady. You see them kind of forcing the top line up. Bernie Mobbs in that 31 keeps running about a half groove higher off the yellow line through the corners. That inside line's not going to like that. They're going to pinch him down, and that could lead to some contact. And if it happens in the turns, that's one of the toughest areas here at Talladega to be able to avoid a wreck, because you don't know if the trucks are going to spin up or spin down the banking. Rodney Sullins right there as well, trying to pin that outside line. Basically, the only thing the inside line's able to do, especially if they don't have the numbers or don't have the momentum, try and stall out the momentum on the top side as well, because the top side gets its big runs off the corner and on the straightaways. So if you can stall them out, then you got a good chance of maybe being able to hold even with them when you get into the corner, where the inside line gets the advantage from at least the first half of turn 1 and turn 3. Kind of evens out when you're through the center of 1 and 2 and through the center of 3 and 4, and then it goes advantage high side once you get to the straightaways. Uncertain if we had a truck possibly blink out back there around the 9th, 10th position, or if someone just jumped up from the inside line to the top line, but it looked like there was a gap for a moment. It almost looked like everybody was kind of checking up for a brief second. Might have just been the inside line losing numbers and stalling out. Not seeing anything on my telemetry that's indicating anybody has fallen out in this point in time. So top 8, 9 now, maybe 10 have gotten themselves single filed back to the 22 of Greg Palmer. That would be 11th place, I believe. Then they're double wide racing behind him. Tom Dixon, Bobby Farrell, Jessica Shelton. Ooh, Tom Dixon. Oh, someone's blowing up! I saw smoke and they're wrecking. I don't know who it was that was blowing up. I couldn't pinpoint where the smoke was erupting from, but Chuck McClure and Brian Schilling are involved. Tim Novsker as well. Kyle Lawson, David Cannon. The caution is out, and that's 3 playoff contenders right there. The former winner of the season, Mark Paglia. Novsker in the 088, the truck is stalled out in the grass. It looks like his evening is over. Potentially his playoff hopes of moving on to the Final Four are over. He may have been the truck that blew up. I'm not certain yet. Brian Schilling all torn up. Where is the 17 of McClure? I believe he's actually had to teleport back to pit road. Novsker is done for the evening. Still waiting for word on the 17. David Cannon is done for the night. And that was a horrible place for an engine to let go. Second caution of the evening. Only 10 laps into this race, and this one's going to have a lot more bearing on who's going to be the final 4 competitors to join Jeremy Jeffries than our first caution did. Let's go back and take a look. Again, I'm very curious. I saw the smoke, but I couldn't tell at first who it was that had the engine let go. I'm assuming it might have been Novsker, but I'm not 100% certain. We're going to focus our replay on the 088. It may have been Brian Schilling. They were both running around the same area. Let's take a look. Was it Novsker? Yes, absolutely it was Tim Novsker. He's trying to get out of the way. He's losing so much speed. They take him 4 wide, and there you see Brian Schilling and Kyle Lawson pinned up against the wall. They then kind of spear the 17 of Chuck McClure. There's Manny D. Robbie Nisus. His Toyota, don't know how bad damage he got. Bill Surratt, I think, was involved in the wreck. And I'm getting the report, Chuck McClure is out of the race. This is huge now. I'm going to have to do a lot of crunching of numbers to be able to figure out who is in trouble, who is not. Here's a look focusing on the 17 of McClure. Metallic was leading that outside line. A lot of drivers were committed up there, and just about all of them were caught up in this wreck. David Cannon caught in the middle of it. He had McClure up on the rear deck lid of his car. Tell you what, driver did a heck of a job getting through that wreck. Was the driver of the number 7 Sunoco Chevrolet Silverado of Cy Jones. We're taking an onboard with him. If we had a good hands move of the race, it might be this driver. This is from the helmet cam. Gets the thing back down. Grass, his best friend, goes into a slide. You hear him. Upshift, downshift, upshift, downshift, trying to get some grip with those rear tires while in the grass, but he never hit a thing. Job well done there for Cy Jones. Now we had that roof cam for Chuck McClure. Saw how he got a little piece of the first incident. Let's take a look and see the onboard with the 17 here. The second incident he was involved in today. Wow. Yeah, we lose the camera there for a moment. That's big hits. Can't really see it because we're looking forward with that camera, but the big hit that I think took him out was he literally got T-boned up into the wall by the 97 of Kyle Lawson. And that was pretty close towards the front of the truck where the engine is housed, so that might be a big reason why the driver who came into this race as the points leader in the playoffs, was the regular season champion, could very well not be moving on to the next round of the playoffs to be a multi-time champion here in the Tally Challenge Series. McClure, a former champ, I believe, if I recall correctly, it was season 52, I think, when he won his championship. Season 52 or season 54. Might have been season 54, actually. I remember it was an even-numbered season. But we still have the lights on atop the Pace truck. Robbie Nisus is going to stay out and lead a lap when he comes to pit road. That would turn the lead over to Grant Wesley. Joe DeSpirito, Ken Roberts, Rodney Sullins, and Greg Palmer will more than likely be the top 5 when we go back green. So I'm going to take this opportunity to try and do a little bit of number crunching, try and figure out what the scenario is here for drivers that came in above the cut line and drivers that came in below the cut line. For Tim Novsker, he will not be moving on to the Final Four. This much we know. He was below the cut line, and he is out of the race. So Novsker will not be advancing into the championship battle next week. Brian Schilling, we know, is involved in the wreck. He has continued on, but I don't see how that truck can be up to speed. So we'll keep an eye on him, DeSpirito, and Seminara as far as their battle, because those 3 drivers came into this race only separated by 5 points. But now, what about Chuck McClure? What is the scenario he needs to not fall outside of the top 4 in points? He had a 22-point gap between himself and Joe DeSpirito. We had 32 drivers that took the green. For Chuck McClure, he needs for Joe DeSpirito or anybody else behind him to not finish any higher than 10th place with the 32 car field. McClure did not lead a lap in this race, so we throw out that bonus point. The 32 drivers that took the green, I believe actually it's 9th. If Joe DeSpirito finishes 9th or better, McClure is out. If Seminara finishes 8th or better, McClure is out. And then Grant Wesley is still the must-win situation. There's no way mathematically that Grant Wesley can knock Chuck McClure out on points. And more than likely, too, if he were to win, it'd be close as to whether he would eliminate out Brian Schilling or Chuck McClure. I don't think, no, there's no way that he'd be able to knock Chuck McClure out because McClure would have enough points. So only DeSpirito and Seminara at this point in time can knock out McClure. And all three, Schilling, or make that DeSpirito, Seminara, and Wesley could knock out Brian Schilling. But it's still a long ways to go. I mean, this thing is not over by a long shot. We've only run 14 laps, completed 13 laps of 66. There's still time that Wesley, DeSpirito, and Seminara could run into issues, and then it would come down to a survival of the fittest. Same for Rodney Summons there in the 38. They've been the lucky ones so far that have avoided disaster. But the night is still young, and we've still got the possibility, too, that pit road could play its part as we got a spin on the backstretch. Manny Diaz gone around at Alliance Truck Parts Ford F-Series. Luckily, it was towards the back of the pack. Otherwise, we might have had the lights come back out atop the pace truck and might have run another lap under caution, but like we are still indicating we are going back green. So we gave you the top 5. Get ready to go back racing here at Talladega. Wesley DeSpirito, Ken Roberts, Rodney Sullins, and Donnie Garrett. Greg Palmer is now in 6th, Bob Seminara in 7th, 8th, John Godfrey, 9th, Jessica Schulten, and Bernie Mobbs in 10th. 3 drivers back in the garage here after what we just saw. Knopfsker, McClure, and Dave Cannon. They joined Jason Scheck. 27 drivers remain, all 27 on the lead lap. Brian Schilling is 21st. Continuing on, we'll see if he's going to be up to speed. Milt, Surratt, I'm seeing Mark Pagley back there. They took some big shots there in that wreck. I don't know how up to speed they really are going to be, but I think they're still planning on this being a race of attrition and maybe being able to squeak in by a couple of points into advancing into the Final Four. Green flag back in the air. Grant Wesley going to lead us into turn 1. Jumps up to the top side already. Picks up Joe DeSpirito. Look at the run the inside line there. Ken Roberts and Greg Palmer as Roberts pushes up there off of 2. Almost a little contact between the 55 and the 88. And we got another car blowing up back there. That's the 80 of Milt Surratt. No caution, but Milt Surratt's engine has now gone kaboom. That's the second mechanical failure we've had, and now the caution is out. 80 was on the racing surface. That's why the caution came out. And with the caution being out and us not being attended to go, the field is frozen. The drivers are technically racing back, but they cannot advance their position from the time that the yellow flew. That way they can get around and pick up the pace truck quickly. Well, normally when we end up seeing a driver have a mechanical failure, they'll try and get down to the apron as quickly as possible to avoid bringing out a caution. Did not see the 80 make any evasive maneuver down to the inside of the racetrack, stayed on the racing surface, and that's why the caution had to be thrown. The sim reading that debris was being dropped down and subsequently throwing the caution. Go back and take a look here at the Milt Surratt incident. I was going to bring up this point too, back when we had the problem with Tim Knopfsker's engine letting go going into turn 1. Air 2003 has the option where you can either run with smoke turned on or smoke turned off. And I would love to know, based off of that option, how many drivers actually elected to possibly have smoke turned off with this race and did not know that the 088 had the engine go south. Now, all drivers are in the same channel, so communication is available to all drivers, but You have to wonder that even when somebody says I'm blowing up, you can't really react at a moment's notice. Sometimes you see that smoke, you're able to react quickly, but here's the Milt Surratt problem. Almost looked like when he shifted up to fourth gear, that's when the engine let go. And you see right there, he was making his way down towards the apron, but then stayed on the racetrack. He rode on the right side of the yellow line. Now he's down on the inside, but it's too late at that point in time. The caution's already been thrown. So the caution could have possibly been avoided, because I believe when we saw that he was blown up, he was heading out of turn 2 onto the back straightaway, and the pace truck was still sitting on pit road. Puts us under yellow once again. Let's go on board with the 80 and listen and see if we end up having the engine go south on the upshift. Yep, right there. Trying to shift it up into fourth gear, and I guess the damage just too great. He had roof damage, we could visibly see. That truck had been up and over on lap 2. Just was not able to, the truck was not able to withstand the high rate of speed, and subsequently the engine let go. Well, this is giving drivers a lot of opportunities here to work out some pit strategy in the early going, whether they want to have track position or they want to come down pit road, top off the fuel tank, and maybe make it a little bit further on gas. We're working our third caution of the night, and we have only completed 16 laps in this race. We had no drivers a lap down, so no need for a lucky dog. As a matter of fact, up until this point, we have had no drivers in need of the free pass. With the retiring of Milt Surratt, that leaves us with 26 of our original 31 drivers still running, and all 26 are on the lead lap. Dottie Garrett in the 77 is going to stay out and lead a lap here. Got pole sitter Bernie Mobbs right behind him, and then Bob Dixon in the 143. Couple of Dodges up in the podium right now. Doug Hewlick crossing the line in 4th, and Kelly Causey in the 5th position. Sad to see 80 of Milt Surratt out of the race here tonight. We documented that he had been dealing with some medical problems. We hadn't seen him for a few weeks here. Nice to see him back on the racetrack. Not the way he wanted to return, I'm sure. Up and over there on the back straightaway, and then an engine failure putting him out of the race in the 27th position. But nice to see him back on the racetrack nonetheless, and we'll more than likely see him in next week's season finale. All right, so a storyline that I've been waiting to get to, and we're going to talk about it here, was the fact that kind of been under the radar, but the bracket series is finally entered into its final stages, as we ended up eventually having Brian Schilling last week advancing into the championship of the losers bracket. Grant Wesley, obviously by default not being here, ended up deferring the win to Schilling. And so Brian Schilling is going to be taking on Jeremy Jeffries. Those are going to be the two that are going to battle it out for the bracket championship. Jeffries, of course, coming in with the momentum of the win last week. More than likely, the bracket series here tonight may be his main focus. Brian Schilling has had issues this evening. He's been involved in 2 of our 3 cautions tonight. The biggest impact in the second caution of the evening, and he is still running. You can see his Square D Dodge right there in the 5th position, but That truck is definitely damaged. I would have to assume maybe off the pace, though we haven't had a long enough green flag run to be able to find out. Trying to do everything he can to hold off Jeremy Jeffries to win the bracket challenge, and more importantly, to advance his way into the Final Four to compete for the championship. As things stand right now, with where he's running, he would be in the Final Four. Joe DeSpirito and Bob Seminara are back in 9th and 10th. They are the two that he really has to worry about. Chuck McClure, he's obviously keeping an eye on the 24 and the 712, because if they advance anywhere up inside of the top 5, they could knock him out of the Final Four via points. And of course, that bright neon number 88 of Grant Wesley, he could really mix things up if he were able to get the victory here tonight, get his 4th win on the season in what is a must-win situation race for the defending champion. The way they'll line up here for this restart, Donnie Garrett, again, the leader electing the top line for the start/restart. Bernie Mobbs, who led us to green to start this race, will be 2nd. Bob Dixon's in 3rd, Doug Kulik in 4th, and Brian Schilling will complete the top 5 of the 4 Dodges in this race. 3 of them currently up inside of the top 5 positions. Robbie Nices, his Ford, will line up in 6th, Grant Wesley in 7th, Ken Roberts 8th, 9th Joe DeSpirito, and Bob Seminara is going to complete the top 10. Jessica Schulten's 11th, Greg Palmer 12th, John Godfrey 13th, Josh Metallic 14th, 15th will be Rodney Sullins, Terry Bombard 16th, 17th Mark Paglia, Kyle Lawson 18th, 19th Glenn Harris, and Tom Dixon will complete the top 20. The rest of the drivers running, all in the lead lap: Jeremy Jeffries, Wiley Coates, Cy Jones, Manny D, Kelly Causey, and Bobby Farrell. Green flag set to come back out as we're getting close to a third of the way through this race. Lap 20 will go on the board. Lap 19 will be completed as Bernie Mobbs timed the start, but he did cross the line before the 77 did. Will be interesting to see what the call is on that. Normally, if you pass the leader on the inside line before the start-finish line, you end up receiving a black flag penalty. I would assume since the 31... Oh, wait a minute, hold that thought! We got another wreck. Dixon, DeSpirito, Wesley, and Schilling all spinning to the inside. And we got more. Hewlick, Glenn Harris, Tom Dixon. Didn't even give a chance for our graphics guy to bring the green flag banner up. We're immediately back under caution once again. Wiley Coate was in that one. 4th caution of the night. I think these drivers don't realize it's an elimination race. My goodness. Bernie Mobbs will be the one to lead us back to the caution. A couple of drivers that have received black flags, more than likely for the restart. We'll check and see if they're able to have those cleared or not. Get them under green, the caution comes out. You usually have to wait till the next restart to be able to serve it or have it cleared. And it looks like both of the Dixons were involved in this, and both have retired. Bob Dixon and Tom Dixon both. I was talking about the great representation of Dodge, and one of them is gone, apparently. Let's go back and take a look at what happened. Started with the 143 of Bob Dixon. And I think he might have gotten a bad bump. I'm not certain. Find out here. He might have actually not quite been clear on Donnie Garrett. Garrett might have had a run here out of 2. Replay will tell the story. Oh, yeah. From that angle, it almost looked like Bob Dixon was looking out the windshield, trying to follow the line that Bernie Mobbs was running. and he had the 77 of Donnie Garrett on his right rear. And bumper grab came into place when the 143 continued to move up and the 77 was there. Let's see if we can get ourselves a better angle of this. Watch this off of 2. Watch how the 143 is moving up, moving up, moving up, moving up. Continue to move up, yeah. I think what he was doing was following the line of the 31, who he was pushing at the time. And Garrett was running his line, and 143 just got hooked. Boy, a lot of smoke there in turn 2. You can't really see all the drivers involved. But I do know that at least 3 playoff contenders were collected up in that. Wesley in the 88, Espirito in the 24, and Brian Schilling in the 4. And I don't think any of them really got extensive damage, but we are going to look back at quite a number of replays just to make absolutely certain. I think most of them spun to the inside, didn't make contact with the wall. We might actually be able to tell just from this shot alone about both, well, actually maybe all 3, Schilling, Wesley, and Espirito. They were on the inside line. Yeah, Hewlett gets Wesley, Dixon gets Schilling. Espirito does make contact with the left side of his 24. Schilling comes to a stop quickly enough. I believe Wesley did as well. They continued to wreck there. Harris, I think, got run into by somebody. Might have been by Tom Dixon in the 45, perhaps. Yeah, we can confirm Grant Wesley. I don't think he really hit anything. I don't think he even really hit another truck. Here's Espirito. Yeah, aside from the hit there to the passenger side, I don't think the 88 really hit anything else. Espirito pancakes the left side of his Chevrolet Silverado. Oh, and then there you see Bobby Farrell was the one that tagged the 08 of Glenn Harris, but like Harris was checking up for the 45 of Tom Dixon. See how Tom goes around. Running kind of at the tail end of this lead pack. Got a couple stragglers back there in Paglia and Wiley Coates. There's the wreck ahead. Tom gets on the brakes, and Wiley Coates does not. Harris and Bobby Farrell also get bits and pieces of this, and then Manny D, whew, just squeaks on by. Big hit there from the 6 into the back of the 45, and that takes Tom Dixon out of this race. And as mentioned, Bob Dixon has also retired from the race. The garage area is filling up. We got 7 drivers back there now. And a bunch of torn up trucks that are still out there continuing on. Bob Seminara, the race leader here, as could maybe get the 1 to green this time. One good news, as mentioned, we haven't had to utilize the lucky dog or the free pass because we've not had any drivers a lap down under these caution periods. And so that means that we've got no extra lap that we add on. Oh, now Seminara is going to come to pit lane. I believe, at least he's running low as if he's indicating he's coming to pit lane. He'll be giving up quite a bit of track position, and I'm actually being told here Seminara stayed out, led that lap, get that bonus point for the sole purpose of trying to advance into the Final Four. So it was a strategy call, giving up the track position to get that bonus point. You know, I feel like we highlight a lot of drivers here this playoffs, and I feel like we did this last season too, and the one guy we kind of miss out on highlighting is Rodney Sullins in that 38. Sullins was in the championship hunt last season, almost pulled it off, but came up just a little short on fuel strategy. Makes it into the playoffs again this season through points. He's been consistently up inside of the top 5, top 10. advanced his way into the round of 8, and he's sitting pretty right now with a perfectly pristine truck. He's not been involved in any of our 4 cautions here tonight, at least not to my knowledge, and has a good shot of advancing to the Final Four for the 2nd straight season. Well, look at somebody who's been able to keep it clean and keep it consistent to maybe close the thing out next week. No further than that 38. He's going to be rolling off 3rd here on this restart behind Manny D. Uses the top line there in the 710. Bernie Mobbs will be on the inside line. It's going to be interesting here. Manny D, remember, was based off of our random qualifying draw, was going to start on the outside of the front row alongside of Bernie Mobbs. So this is effectively what the front row would have looked like at the initial start of this race, but Manny D chose to take the voluntary end of the longest line. Now it's going to be Manny D that's going to lead us to the green flag. A lot of drivers will drop to the back for multiple reasons. Either they don't feel comfortable up at the front, they don't feel they can get a good enough restart, they don't want to be involved maybe in an early wreck, would like to run their own pace. Not certain what the reasoning was for Manny D to elect to drop to the back, but now we'll see what Manny D is able to do up here at the front. Really outside of the solo spin that Manny had on the back straightaway, really has not been involved in any heavy contact in any of these wrecks. There's been a couple of times that he's been clipped and spun out, but as far as I'm aware, that truck is up to speed. Now, he is running quite high on the racetrack right here through the tribal. It says to me he might be planning to drop back once the green flag is out, but see how they are able to maneuver their way around him if that is the case. Green flag back in the air. We're back underway. Lap 25 it goes on the board. And I don't know if Manny D was moving out of the way, or if Terry Bombard just decided to go up the middle 3 wide. Now Rodney Sullins jumps up to the middle line, and there's Jeremy Jeffries. Boy, with all that we've seen here tonight already, playoff contenders out of the race, playoff drivers and their trucks all torn up, how good does Jeremy Jeffries have to feel knowing that he came into this race locked in to that Final Four regardless of what happens? And he's out there trying to see if he can get some momentum here, maybe pick up another victory, make a statement against whatever 3 drivers are going to advance with him into that championship battle next week. We're going to wait a while before I give an update as far as who looks like they're in, who looks like they're out, because a couple of things that I want to allow to play out first. Want to see how up to speed that Ford truck is of Brian Schilling before I bring that into the equation. The one thing that I can say at this point in time is that neither Joe DeSpirito nor Bob Seminara are running up inside of the top 10. So Chuck McClure at this point in time is safe in the Final Four on points, but that could change in the matter of a lap and a matter of a corner. Remember, too, with Bob Seminara leading the lap that he did, that does change his scenario of knocking Chuck McClure out of the Final Four. That would now put it where Bob Seminara would have to finish in 8th or better to be able to advance. Or correction, in 9th or better. 9th or better to be able to advance. 9th or better for DeSpirito, 9th or better for Bob Seminara to knock McClure out. Those two going to be battling each other potentially for that final position in the Final Four. And they're all right now as well chasing the 4 of Brian Schilling. Single file up here at the front, so let's drop back a little bit, see if we can find that square D Dodge, who is in the middle right now with no help. You can definitely see a bow on the left front of the hood. That is going to not help it aerodynamically. He's got trucks to the outside, trucks to the inside. He's going to pick up a drafting partner in Robbie Nisus. But there was only, I believe it was 4 points between himself and Joe DeSpirito, 5 points between himself and Bob Seminara. And right now, Seminara, when he crossed the line, was 5 positions ahead. DeSpirito was 7 positions ahead. So right now, the 4 is on the outside looking in as far as the Final Four are concerned. Spirito is right now in 7th. At least that's where he was when he crossed the line last time. That's where he is actually running right now. So as things currently stand, nearing halfway. Oh, nearly a wreck. Ooh, Donnie Garrett and Josh Metallic. They nearly ended up finding the outside retaining wall there through the tri-oval. Is there full cooldown tonight or something? What is going on? But as things stand right now, your final four would be as so, based off of running position and current points accumulated. It would be Jeremy Jeffries, Rodney Sullins, Joe DeSpirito, and Bob Seminara. And all four of those drivers are right now up inside of the top 10. One thing we've not seen yet today, and that is green flag pit stops. These drivers went back green on lap 25, I do believe. So we're just now starting a run, but it'll be interesting to see if that's the case, the next pit stop that they make would be somewhere in the range of 21 to go, which is right on the mark of what we hear out of these drivers as far as how far they can make it on fuel. We hear 19 to 21. 19 is usually, if you're the race leader for most of that run. 20 is usually the number that most drivers look at. 21 is stretching it if you've been able to save fuel at the tail end of a pack. It could be right on the number of these drivers being able to make it the rest of the way on just one more pit stop. But we've seen 4 cautions here tonight for 16 laps. Have we seen the last of them here? Do things finally settle out, and is it that money stop that determines who's going to be advancing and who is going to be eliminated? Again, tonight determines the final 4. When we know that final 4, hopefully everybody will tune in next week to find out who is going to be the champion. Seminara and DeSpirito, Brian Schilling, all former champs. Grant Wesley, the defending champ. Rodney Sullins and Jeremy Jeffries have never won the championship here in this series. Could season 57 be their season? On a top line trying to form. Donnie Garrett and Josh Metallic. I'm almost wondering if maybe that near wreck that I thought it was going to be through the tri-oval was actually the two of them coordinating to jump up there, create a second line. It was very quick. I'll say that, and that's why it took me by surprise. They are lined up nose to tail, so that might have been their plan all along. And now Rodney Sullins, what a move right there. Talk about a quick move. Jeremy Jeffries was ready, and Bernie Mobbs is going to go outside of the top 5 at least. He'll pick up Donnie Garrett. We'll see if Garrett's going to stay with him or if he's going to take it a lane higher, 3 wide out of turn 4. He shows the nose there to driver's right as now Mobbs will tuck in front of Greg Palmer. So Rodney Sullins will go to the point, and this will be a lap-led bonus point for Rodney, which will continue to aid him in advancing into the Final 4 championship battle next week. Right behind him, the aid of Jeremy Jeffries, and I'm going to be perfectly honest. Up until this point, I'm looking at the grid right now, looking at the telemetry. I thought that Ken Roberts was in a Chevrolet. He's actually in a Ford F-Series. So this whole time, I thought the 55 was a Chevrolet, and that is actually not the case. And his Ford right now is in P3, just ahead of another Ford in Terry Bombard. Actually, nope, as I look at it now, I believe Ken Roberts is a Chevrolet, so I was right. Roberts and Rodney Sullins are both Chevrolets, but they are on Ford chassis, so that makes more sense. Okay. So I was right, but the telemetry was also right, so we were both right. It just got me very confused. Top 6 have got themselves single-filed out. Back to Joe DeSpirito. It's now Greg Palmer who's leading the outside line. He's picked up Donnie Garrett and Josh Metallic. They've got Mark Paglia, Bob Seminara, and Jessica Schulten to their inside. Like that inside line is prevailing, as really the inside line is theoretically the middle line. Nobody is running the bottom right now. Got the middle and the outside groove that are being utilized. And there is nobody else helping in that third line. The Monera's going to get clear. Shelton may get clear here by the time they get off of turn number 2. Got Bobby Farrell, John Godfrey down there as well. Here's the 4 of Brian Schilling is still hanging on to this lead pack. So that's very impressive after the adventure he's been through in the first 10 laps of this race. If something happens to the 712 or the 24, he may still have a shot. There's Grant Wesley in the 88. Grant has, so far here tonight, been not nearly as dominant as he was in the 2 playoff races to start off this postseason, where he had back-to-back victories and second and third wins on the season. He right now is boxed in the 16th position. Grant has led 3 laps here tonight, but leading laps is not going to help him advance into the championship battle. He has to win here tonight, after he was a no-show, for good reason, but was a no-show last week and lost out on some very valuable finishing order points. As Rodney Sullins continues to lead, let's take a look at our lap leaders here tonight. John Godfrey has led the most laps so far, 10 total. Bernie Mobbs, our pole sitter, has been out in front for 9. This is right here, the 5th lap led for Rodney Sullins, third most so far here tonight. 4 laps have been led by Donnie Garrett. 2 laps led by Manny D. And then 1 lap led apiece for Bob Seminara, Kelly Causey, and Robbie Nisus. Already documented the 3 laps led by Grant Wesley. Well, it's sounding like the fuel numbers are a little bit different from what I originally projected, based on the fact we had that somewhat quick caution and a number of drivers elected not to come down pit road. It's sounding like a number of them stayed out, and therefore they're about 7 laps away from when they're going to have to come to pit lane. So that throws out the scenario that I was talking about of possibly being able to make it the rest of the way on 1 more pit stop. They will have to make at least 2 trips to pit road if indeed 7 laps is the furthest they could go. That put them around lap 45, giving them, well, that would give them 21 laps to go. Boy, that would make it really close to make it to the finish, but I don't think they'd be able to do it. We had drivers last week that we thought were going to be able to make it the rest of the way, and just about everybody came to pit road. Even had a couple of drivers that had come to pit road that ran out of fuel heading to the start-finish line. Rodney Sullins was one of them. I'm trying to remember who the other driver was that was sputtering. Had a couple of drivers that missed pit road and ended up subsequently throwing away an opportunity at a victory during the final round of green flag pit stops. You had Josh Metallic, who missed pit road. I believe it was Robbie Nisus, I believe, tried to stay out an extra lap, and he ran out of fuel, had to coast the thing back around. I don't remember who that other driver was. It might have been Doug Hewlick. I think it might have been the 23 that ran out of fuel through the tri-oval. Starting to see drivers migrate down there to that inside line now. Remember how nobody was running that lane a couple of laps ago? Now you got everybody migrated down there as close as they can to that yellow line, because they know they want that clear path to pit entry. Nine the radios, waiting to see when they're going to start lighting out, when the hands are going to be waving out the window. Seeing some lighting up right now. Don't know if it's an indication of coming to pit road or not. I think it is. Look, we got some drivers pitting. Heard about 4 projected for a number of these drivers. Let's see who's making the dive, if anyone. Nobody from the lead pack. Not certain. Let's see if there were any drivers at the tail end. Nope, nobody coming to pit road. Thought I saw the radios flashing there. Not yet. Under normal circumstances, one would assume that that second lane there being led by Ken Roberts, Terry Bombard and company, that they'd be planning to pit a lap later than these drivers on the inside line, but we've seen drivers double wide, 3 wide, all try to come to pit lane together, so that's not necessarily an indication that they're just going to yield the inside line and stay out an extra lap. They may try coming to pit road with these drivers on the inside line when and if they are going to be indicating they're heading for maybe their final pit stop of the day. I don't think it's going to be. I don't see a scenario where somebody be able to make it the rest of the way, even if they stretch it as far as their projected fuel says. If they get to completion of 46, then maybe that'd be at 20 to go, but from what I'm hearing, nobody's able to make it that far. They're going to have to pit more than likely at the latest on lap 45 going on to 46, which would put them roughly half a lap to a lap short of making it to the finish. And especially if you're Rodney Sullins in the 38, you've been out in front for half, 2/3 of this run. We got some pitters, yes we do. Oh gosh, Greg Palmer and Jessica Schulten nearly get together. We got a spinner on pit road. That's Mark Pagley and Jeremy Jeffries. Look out. Everyone trying to avoid. I don't think Palmer or Schulten went around. So there is no caution. They kept it straight despite the contact. Yeah, no caution. There's the 22 and the 48. They keep it going. They'll have to pit the next time by. Trouble getting onto pit road. Trouble on pit road. Good thing for Jeffries is he has that win from last week. He knows despite that trouble on pit lane, he's going to be advancing. What about the others who got stacked up behind him? I don't think he made any further contact with anyone on pit road. Everybody was able to avoid him, and he got it righted. Here comes the second pack to pit lane. Oh, Terry Bombard! Oh my gosh! And that truck's going to start sliding back up towards the racing surface. Oh gosh, very close. The back bumper was almost hanging over the pavement as Palmer and Schulten make it onto pit road. Here comes Terry back onto the pit lane. Wait, he took a shot into that inside wall. It has been pandemonium here for these drivers tonight. A couple of moments there might have very well brought out a caution, but didn't. Pagley, I think, missed pit lane. He's now coming to pit road, or else he ended up... Oh, I'm hearing a black flag for the 28. And Despirito must have received a black flag as well. My telemetry is showing that there was a penalty handed out to the 28. Not certain yet on whether the 24 got a speeding penalty or not, but he is on pit lane, so one would have to assume that he also was hit by the speeding police. And that is going to put, I believe, Bob Seminara out in front. And just like that, that is going to help the 4 of Brian Schilling as things cycle around. Well, these guys are not going to be the leaders. It's going to be Donnie Garrett who's going to be the leader. And look who's up to second, Grant Wesley in the 88. It is not over till the fat lady sings, and she's just warming up. We're going to have 22 laps to go this time by. Wesley is very much in the hunt still, must-win situation. Brian Schilling, despite having a horrible first half of this race, he's still got a shot now with Despirito's problems on pit lane. Bob Seminara is now into the picture also. The drivers that have kind of faded out include the 38 of Rodney Sullins and the 24 of Joe Despirito. Rodney Sullins is right now being scored way, way back behind a bunch of these drivers in the 24th position. As a matter of fact, our telemetry is showing him a lap down. Manny D is now going to fall a lap down. They're showing the 38 minus 1. I don't know what happened to him. As Paglia still sits on pit road, there is Despirito, now 20th. Still on the lead lap, but 20th after having to serve his pass-through. And there's the 38 of Rodney Sullins. He is 24th right now, 1 lap down. And that truck appears to be off the pace. He's hitting 181 right now. The 7 of Cy Jones is at 187. So something has happened to the 38 truck, and I don't know what it would have been. Like, he might be trying to get up to speed here now, maybe after picking up the draft from the 7 of Cy Jones. I don't know what happened to him. The worst part about it is, too, we don't have the ability of side-by-side. I would love to be able to go back and see what happened to Rodney Sullins, see about Joe DeSpirito. What happened to these playoff contenders? Well, just like that, after everything is cycled around, Donnie Garrett is now the race leader. Grant Wesley is in second. Kelly Causey's now up to third. Ken Roberts fourth, and Bob Seminara is in the 5th position. Then it's Josh Metallic, Brian Schilling, and Jeremy Jeffries, your top 8 that are in this lead pack. The landscape of the Final Four has completely changed. It now, as things stand, would be Jeremy Jeffries, Brian Schilling, Bob Seminara, and I believe Chuck McClure at this point in time would advance in via points. And the reason for that being is he was 7 points ahead of Rodney Sullins, so Sullins has to finish 7 positions ahead of Chuck McClure because Sullins does have the bonus point for leading a lap here tonight. He led 10 circuits. And Joe DeSpirito, who was 22 points behind Chuck McClure, is now running in the 20th position. Remember, he was in the scenario where he had to finish at least up inside of the top 10. I believe he had to finish 9th or better. And DeSpirito has not led any laps here tonight, so no bonus points thrown into the equation for DeSpirito. Rodney Sullins right now is running 23rd. When McClure DNF'd, he finished 29th. That means that Rodney Sullins, some way, somehow, has to pick up a total of 1 more spot. If he finishes 22nd, he would have the bonus point. That would break the tie, as McClure had no laps led here tonight. But he has to finish 1 position better. And pit road could still play a part into shaking it up once again. Nobody, I'm being told, at least at this point in time, nobody is expected to be able to make it the rest of the way after the pit stop we just saw. Again, credit to Jessica Shelton, our in-race reporter, feeding us this information. We saw her and Greg Palmer have the incident where they couldn't come to pit road with most of the pack. They had to go an extra lap. So even with that extra lap in the tank, if those two are not able to make it the rest of the way, there's no way the drivers that pitted the lap before them would be able to make it the rest of the way. Look at the 24 of Joe DeSpirito there. He just got caught and put a lap down. He would be in the free pass position right now, as would Terry Bombard. Driver that Rodney Sullins is hunting down right now is the 10 of Terry Bombard, as Manny D is on pit lane. Actually, hold on. With Manny D pitting, I believe that it indeed moves Rodney Sullins into 22nd. So Rodney, right now, would be in the Final Four by 1 point over Chuck McClure. He's got Cy Jones right behind him. Cy is on the lead lap, as is Greg Palmer and Jessica Shelton. They are in 17th through 19th, and they're pushing Rodney Sullins up potentially to another position, which would be the 10 of Terry Bombard. Where is he? There is... Wait, nope, that's not Terry. That's Terry. He's on the backstretch right now. Rodney is coming Alpha Turn 2. This is a 4-truck pack. You got a 2-truck pack ahead of Godfrey and Robbie Nisus, who are running 15th, 16th. So these are actually positions for Shelton, Jones, and Palmer to pick up. Then you got Bobby Farrell and Wiley Cohen 13th and 14th. They're tandeming together. Andy D by his lonesome in 23rd. I believe he is now -2. And Terry has now been caught by Kyle Lawson, Bernie Mobbs, and Glenn Harris. So along with Doug Hewlick, they've created a 5-truck pack, which might be able to keep the pack that Rodney Sullins is in at bay. But again, all these drivers are still going to have to come to pit road at least one more time. And the final 4, nearing 10 laps to go, are at this point in time Jeremy Jeffries, who was locked in with his win last week, Bob Seminara, Brian Schilling, and by 1 point right now, Rodney Sullins over Chuck McClure. Donnie Garrett this season just missed out on it, making it into the playoffs. Been very consistent during these playoffs as well. Maybe one of the higher finishing non-playoff drivers, along with Josh Metallic in the 39. Still chasing his first victory on the season, though. Grant Wesley, though, there's no way that Grant's going to push him to a victory. There's no way. Wesley's in a must-win situation. Right now, I think he's more than willing to ride, knowing that there's an eve of at least one more pit stop for these drivers, but then I believe the gloves are off for driver 88. Look at some of the drivers we've got up here, at least at this point in time. It could really mix things up as far as who advances and who doesn't by picking up their first win on the season. Not only Donnie Garrett up here inside the top 5, but you've also got Kelly Causey, former winner from last season. Remember, Causey ended up winning the regular season finale to advance into the playoffs in season 56. Ken Roberts, the season before, if I recall correctly, did the same thing, advanced into the playoffs with a victory early on that year. Bob Seminara there in the 712. This has been under the radar, but maybe unintentionally under the radar season for him. Last year was the regular season champion, was in the hunt for the championship until I believe it was the round of 8, just missed out advancing to the final 4. He's still chasing his first victory of the season as well, is the driver that's 712. Here tonight, he may be able to point his way in to the final 4 after coming to this race 23 points out behind the points leader and 5 points behind the cut line. Remember I said we would, if we had an All-State Good Hands Driver Award, we would have given it to Cy Jones earlier on in this race. If we had an Ironman Award, it would have to go to that 4-truck, right? Brian Schilling. Schilling was in the wall off of turn 2 on the second lap of this race. Then the following caution was up and over in turns 3 and 4. Looked like that truck may have been done for the day. It's still somehow up to speed. It is running up here in this lead pack. And he is currently holding down that 7th position, which at this point in time would have him in the final 4. Coming to 10 laps to go. And one more pit stop still looms. It's also interesting, I don't know how, but it always seems like when we end up having the bracket challenge and we have the lineups of driver versus driver, somehow, some way, there's always a scenario where you find them nose to tail. Remember, coming into this race, it was Brian Schilling versus Jeremy Jeffries. Look at your nose to tail 7th and 8th, the 4 and the 8. I don't know how it manages to happen, but it always seems to, and now we've got a lead change. Grant Wesley says, all right, Donnie, you've led enough. He jumps to the top. He picks up Kelly Causey and Ken Roberts, and he's going to put his Valvoline Menards Chevrolet, or actually, correction, that's actually a Toyota Tundra, out in the clean air, and he will lead more than likely if he can keep Causey behind him. This will be Grant's first, or no, correction, that'll be his 4th lap lead today. I was gonna build it up that it was his first lap lead, but no, he's actually been out in front previously here tonight. I think it might actually be his first laps under green that he's been out in front, though. I think those 3 laps that he led were actually under pacing. And Donnie Garrett, obviously I believe Grant Wesley made the move, so he'll be the first one to pit road when the green flag pit stops take place, but I think that also maybe Donnie Garrett didn't necessarily fight it because he's been out in front for the entirety of this run. Might be trying to drop back into a safe spot, which he did in the 5th position to save a little bit of fuel. Brian Schilling's now lost touch with the aid of Jeremy Jeffries. Got Joe DeSpirito, the lap truck, with him. We'll see if he can draft back up here to this group. When they're single filed out, you've got damage and no tracking partner, you're more than likely going to drop back. Looks like he is staying in touch. About 2 truck lengths of daylight here, and now he kind of falls off the front bumper of the 24. Getting racy back here at the tail end of this pack. Talent showed the top side on Donnie Garrett. Jeffries dives to the bottom. Brian Schilling's going to chop across the nose of Jeremy Jeffries to try and pick up a spot on Ken Roberts. Things are getting dicey as now everybody's going to migrate down to the inside line. Ooh, Donnie Garrett not quite clear there on the 39. Now he'll tuck in. Well, that side-by-side battling really helped out Brian Schilling because now he, along with DeSpirito, have drafted back up to this group. DeSpirito's looking up at the lead pack and he's saying, please, guys, wreck, please, because right now he would be in a free pass position. Robbie Nisus in the 54 is in the 2nd free pass position. And in case you're not keeping an eye on the ticker on the top of your screen, that 38 of Ronnie Sullins is still holding down the 22nd position. However, the problem for him is Grant Wesley is leading this race. If Grant wins here tonight, then Chuck McClure and Ronnie Sullins are both eliminated from the Final Four. Ronnie Sullins is the biggest cheerleader right now of anybody up here in this lead group, with the exception of the 88 truck. Even if Bob Seminara were to win, Rodney Sullins would still advance into the Final Four via points. Since at this point in time, with running in 4th, Bob Seminara would have advanced into the Final Four via points himself. I see some chat lighting up. Are we coming to pit road this time? At the line, it's 5 to go. Last week, we saw last-minute fireworks with pit stops in the closing stages. We've got pitters. Here we go. The money stop here in the penultimate race of the season. An advancement to the Final Four is on the line, and everybody in this group hit it perfectly. Grant was really fast and really smooth. I'll be surprised if he may not leave pit road as the leader when this all cycles around. And we've seen when he's out in front in the closing stages, he is very difficult to pass. You got another group that's come down here: Bombard, Hewlick, Lawson, Mobbs, and Harris. Rodney Sullins stays out an extra lap there, along with Greg Palmer, Shelton Cy Jones, John Godfrey, and Bobby Farrell are on pit road this time. I'm going to be keeping an eye on the telemetry to see if anybody got a speeding penalty this time. You don't want to throw away a chance to go to the Final Four, the closing stage of a race like this. Ken Roberts getting by his lonesome. He stayed out an extra lap. Greg Palmer also stayed out the extra lap here with the lap truck of Rodney Sullins. We'll probably see him on pit road this time. Indeed he is. As projected, the 88's the leader here. Oh, Josh Metallic's coming back to pit road. He must have gotten hit with a speeding penalty. Our telemetry is only showing a couple of drivers that get speeding penalties. Some of them we have to know just by seeing them come to pit lane, and apparently Metallic was one of them. That is a tough break, as Metallic would have more than likely finished at least inside of the top 7, if not in the top 5, maybe in victory lane. And now it's decision time for Jeremy Jeffries. How aggressive is he going to be with his moves on Grant Wesley? Because remember, if Jeremy Jeffries can keep Grant Wesley from winning this race, then he doesn't have to deal with the defending champ in the Final Four next week. Jeffries is already locked in. He's got nothing to lose. What type of risks does he take here to get around Grant Wesley. Wesley won back-to-back races to start off the playoffs. Jeffries won last week, so we could end up having back-to-back winners, if that makes any sense. Brian Schilling is up here in third, Kelly Causey in fourth, and Bob Seminara is in the fifth position. And as I look at the running order here, I want to see where the 4 and the 38 are in relation to each other, because now it could be Schilling on the hot seat if Wesley wins, depending on where the 38 cycles around to. Right now, they're showing him 21st, but that is not after his cycle coming off of pit road, so we're going to wait for the documentation of exactly where he's running as race leader Grant Wesley comes to 2 to go. The gap between Brian Schilling and Rodney Sullins was 11 points. So Schilling would need to finish 12 positions ahead of Rodney Sullins. Actually, correction, Brian would actually have to finish 13 positions ahead of Rodney Sullins, because Schilling has not led a lap, Rodney Sullins has. So with running in third, Schilling would need to have Rodney running 16th or worse, and as they cross the line, Rodney was running 21st. So Schilling right now is in, and Sullins is out with the 88 out in front. We got a high line forming. Kelly Causey, Bob Seminara, and Donnie Garrett. Jeffries is going to jump up there, but Wesley sees the move coming. Donnie Garrett looks low here on Brian Schilling. Oh, don't wreck, guys. You're coming to the white. White flag in the air. 1 lap to go. Where does Jeffries make the move? Can he make the move? Kelly Causey with a big push from Bob Seminara. Jeffries not quite clear. If Wesley throws the block here on Kelly Causey, can Causey take him even higher? There's the block. There's the move. They're 3 wide. Jeffries stays with the 88. Here comes some help for the middle line. Here comes some help for the top line. I'm really surprised Jeremy Jeffries staying with Grant Wesley. Donnie Garrett trying to help the 712 of Bob Seminara. They're going to have a huge run through the tri-oval. It's going to be 3 wide maybe coming to the line for this win. Seminara on the top, Wesley on the bottom. They're banging doors. Seminara gets out of shape to the line. It's Grant Wesley who's going to win by a splitter. Seminara was out of shape, tried to gather it back up. Wesley kept it straight. And Grant Wesley is going to advance into the Final Four in a must-win situation. A crazy race to the line. Last week, it was super close as to who won the race in terms of interval from first to second. This week, it may have been closer. Telemetry is reading 1/100th. And I'm wondering if that post-race contact, if that was a congratulatory bump, or if Seminara wasn't all that thrilled about the door banging there through the tri-oval to the start-finish line. We'll be getting both drivers' side of it here in post-race interviews, as well as Jeremy Jeffries, who completed the podium. Well, the 88 truck now torn up after that contact. The radiator probably pushed in. But Grant Wesley, the winner of this race, a 4-time winner this season, 3 wins in 4 playoff races, and next week he will defend his championship against Jeremy Jeffries. I believe Bob Seminara, or make a correction, Jeremy Jeffries, trying to do the math here real quick in my head. That'd be Jeffries, Seminara, and Schilling, if I'm not mistaken. Saw Bob Seminara doing some burnouts there. I almost wonder if he's feeling the 88 at a post race and that he was the winner. I don't know. A lot of questions, and we'll get some answers here in just a moment. We're going to go back and take a look at a replay of that battle to the finish. That was crazy. Certainly would love to be a fly on the wall of that post-race discussion, right? Well, we're going to get a little bit of an insider. So here's The battle back to the start-finish line. Seminara with help from Donnie Garrett. Wesley, you see, push up there, gets into the side of Bob Seminara. Seminara, then a little bit of a push from behind from Garrett, gets him out of shape. And right there was the difference. Maybe a little more than a splitter. Donnie Garrett and Jeremy Jeffries, they flip across the start-finish line, and then this is where I'm wondering if there might have been some frustration by Seminara to Wesley after the door banging through the tri-oval. Nonetheless, we'll take a look here. We'll do a freeze frame of that finish at the start-finish line, and then we'll show you the finishing results here tonight. Let's start it with fireworks. It ends in fireworks. At the end of the day, we got ourselves a Final Four. Here is a look at the finishing results. Wesley with the win, Seminara in second, Jeremy Jeffries in third. Donnie Garrett, who led the most laps here tonight, he's going to bring it home with a solid fourth. And Kelly Causey, who tried to make that move with half a lap to go in the back straightaway, got blocked, a little bit of bumper grab, lost his momentum, but he's able to hang on for fifth. Brian Schilling, I cannot believe that Brian Schilling was able to bring that thing home in sixth. That was a yeoman's job for him here tonight. Kept his Final Four hopes alive, and based off of my rough calculations, he is going to be advancing into the championship battle. Ken Roberts going to bring it home in seventh. Ken was basically a mainstay inside the top 10 all night long. Great run for the 55. Doug Hulick, he was involved in that big wreck on the back straightaway, and he's going to bring it home in eighth. Kyle Lawson, great run there in that 97. Limited number of starts this season. He gets a top 10 in ninth, and Glenn Harris is going to get that final 10th position. Good run for him. Bernie Mobbs, the pole sitter, in 11th. Greg Palmer in 12th. 13th for Josh Metallic after he had to serve that late black flag speeding penalty. Jessica Shelton there in 14th. Bobby Farrell completed the top 15. And then the rest of the drivers finished on the lead lap, 18 in total. John Godfrey, Cy Jones, and Wiley Coate. Robbie Nices finished in 19th. Joe DeSpirito, after he had to serve a pass-through after the first round of green flag pit stops, end up finishing a lap down in 20th, so the multi-time champ will not be advancing to the Final Four. Rodney Sullins, his bid for back-to-back Final Four appearances, he comes up short, 21st here tonight. He would have, I believe, mathematically made it in if Grant Wesley had not won this race. He would have been at 2 points to the good over Chuck McClure. Terry Bombard also finished off the lead lap in 22nd, then Manny D was the last driver to finish, 2 laps down in 23rd. We had a late race retiring by Mark Paglia. He got 24th. And then the rest of these drivers were caught up in the first 3 or 4 incidents of the night that tore up a lot of race cars. Bob Dixon, Tom Dixon in 25th, 26th. Milt Surratt, Tim Knopfsker, Chuck McClure, David Cannon, and Jason Scheck. Of course, Tim Knopfsker and Chuck McClure, neither of those drivers really were able to get out of the gate with their DNFs and subsequently do not advance to the Final Four. McClure involved in the big wreck that brought out the second caution. Tim Knopfsker had his engine let go mechanical problem, takes him out of advancing into the championship hunt next week. Well, it's time to unravel some of these stories here, as we've got our top 3 who all, along with Brian Schilling, will be battling for the championship next week. So we'll get their post-race thoughts and their pre-finale thoughts as well. Let's kick things off with the guy who came into this race with absolutely nothing to worry about regardless of where he finished because of his victory last week, Jeremy Jeffries. Jeremy, it's Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got me?
Hey, Seth.
Well, man, I'll tell you what, scenario just like you would have wanted it, up there hunting down the leader in the closing stages of this race. You had nothing to worry about as far as advancing into that Final Four with your victory last week. What kind of moves were you planning there on that final lap?
Oh, man. Well, I didn't ever think, I thought I was just going to be pushing the 88 there to the end because I figured I was just kind of stuck there at the bottom. So I was, that's what I was going to do. And then he went up to try to block the run on the high side. It's like, well, I'll try to go low and see if I can get another magic run like I did last week, but it didn't work.
We had a lot of different drivers, a lot of playoff contenders have issues here tonight, whether it was getting caught up in wrecks, mechanical failures. We saw pit road play a huge part with a couple of drivers getting penalized. I mean, how good did it feel not only starting this race, but seeing everything take place with the playoff drivers, knowing that you were worry free. Whatever happened to you here tonight, you could have started and parked and you were still advancing into that final four. How much alleviation of pressure was it to have that locked in spot after your win last week?
Oh man, it was great, especially starting in the rear. I just didn't know how those first few cautions I had to drive through some wrecks. I was like, well, this is nice. If I get caught in one, it's not a big deal. Um, and then I actually did get spun on pit road pitting there the next to the last caution. I was like, well, I'm not even mad about that because I really don't have anything to worry about. I was racing Chilling for the bracket, and I knew he had motor damage, or at least some car damage there, truck damage, and so it was good that we could still race it out there at the end. Unfortunately, he just didn't have the speed to keep up and finish ahead of me.
Yeah, we actually talked about you and Schilling in that bracket battle here tonight. Congratulations on that. We talked about the confidence coming into this race, but now what about the confidence leaving this race, heading into that Final Four battle? Because we know that with the playoff system, it's going to come down to who finishes the best. So it's not necessarily you have to win the race, but if you look at the last two races we've had now, you've been up there inside of the top three on the final lap. So if that plays out the same way next week, I mean, what's the confidence level with this momentum?
Well, I've put myself in position there at the end, and like you said, that's good momentum to have going into the championship race. So I'm excited. I'm ready.
Well, Jeremy, congratulations on the great run here tonight to follow up your win last week. Going to be a lot of fun to see if you can maybe get another good finish, maybe a victory to close it out with the championship next week. Before we let you go, though, we're going to give you the opportunity for some thank you sponsors and shoutouts.
All right. Thanks to FRN and you, Seth, for doing the broadcast. The owners and admins here at RTG. All the drivers, really. Tonight wasn't our best showing as far as drivers go, but we actually did Daytona on Monday and went caution free, so that was nice. And my XFM teammates, and congrats to Grant or whoever ends up being the winner. I was in that position last week not knowing, so it's not a good feeling, but yeah, that's all I got.
That's Jeremy Jeffries' third place finish here tonight. We already knew he was locked into the Final Four. We'll be looking forward to seeing what you're able to do next week with that championship hanging in the balance. Best of luck.
Thank you.
And you heard there with Jeremy Jeffries, even a little bit of a question mark in his voice of who won this race. Of course, you're going to want to tune in next week because a lot can change between what we're announcing right now and what we tell you when we're getting pre-race ceremonies and getting ready to grid up for next week's finale. The Final Four that we announced tonight may not officially be the Final Four heading in next week. A lot of things that admins will maybe have to look at based off of what we saw in the final closing moments of tonight's event. But now it's time to kind of get the driver's side of what happened there on the final lap through the tri-oval. And we'll kick things off with the driver that came up just short of his first victory of the season, but nonetheless, points-wise, should be advancing to the Final Four, Bob Seminara. Hey, Bob, Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got me?
Yeah, what's going on, Seth?
Oh man, I'll tell you what, a nail biter of a finish. We ended up, I think my calculator worked overtime here tonight trying to figure out all the point scenarios because we had drivers that were caught up in wrecks. We had drivers that had pit road penalties. All the playoff drivers were close together at the beginning and then they all got spread out and it was trying to figure out who was ahead of who. But man, we talk about the fact that this season you've been trying to get that 7-12 to victory lane. Almost were able to do it here tonight. Had a heck of a run there out of turn four. What little more do you need? Because, that was a heck of a save there through the exit of the tri-oval coming to the line.
Yeah, I don't really have too much to say about that. I ran the race I needed to, and I was in position there to win that. So
right now, based off of my rough calculations, you are advancing into the Final Four through points. As you mentioned, did everything you needed to do there. We ended up hearing that you played strategy, gave up track position to get the bonus point lap led. That certainly made the calculations a lot different when trying to figure out who was where. But we saw here tonight, playoff drivers get caught up in different things. The track, Talladega, always unpredictable, can get you many different ways, whether it was getting involved in a wreck, whether it was pit road. You had the execution here tonight. Next week, being in the Final Four, it's going to be 4 drivers that are battling for the championship. Everybody else is out there just trying to finish out the season with a W. How difficult is it going to be as far as execution next week?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if they don't change the finish here, then my pitch strategy of leading that lap was critical because I ended up tying Brian with that. But, yeah, next week, I feel bad for Chuck and Tim, the luck they had tonight. Yeah, it's going to be all out, just like it usually is. But, yeah, it was a crazy race. I missed a couple wrecks early on, right? I got knocked to the infield, no damage though, and the other one was I drove right through it, so luck was on my side, and I positioned everything. Everything worked out, so till I got banged there at the end. But we'll be back next week, and we'll be going for another championship.
You talk about the fact a couple of the playoff contenders out in the early going of this one. We saw quite a number of wrecks in the first half of this race. I believe it was 4 in total before we got a third of the way through this evening's event. Are you planning on maybe strategizing for a race similar to that next week, knowing what's on the line for everybody? Or do you think that we're going to see maybe a cleaner race and have to try and formulate some kind of pit strategy?
Yeah, well, it depends on the lotto queue and where I start. If I don't run aggressive though, I tend not to have a good race. So I'll be thinking about that. A couple guys blew motors. That doesn't normally happen. So there was some freak stuff that happened there. I thought the racing was pretty good, but yeah, it'll depend where I start and see where the guys are at. But it'll be turned up. I'll be strapped in and holding onto the wheel tight.
Well, we're going to be looking forward to watching that next week. Bob, congratulations on advancing into the Final Four. We'll wait in the wings here this week, see if it's via points or via the victory here tonight, as maybe under review what happened there on the final lap. But nonetheless, before we let you go, we're going to give you the opportunity for some thank you sponsors and shout-outs.
Yeah, thank you, brother. Appreciate you and the broadcast, and Sean and David and RTG and all the Josh and Wiley and Tim for all they do, the admin and all the guys here. This is the place to race. FTMF and Mobs Motors, and we'll be back next week.
That's Bob Seminara, second place here tonight. He's locked into the Final Four to compete for the championship next week. Best of luck with that, Bob. Congratulations on the good run tonight.
Thanks, Seth.
And it's time to now go down to victory lane. 4th time this season, 3rd time in the playoffs. It's the defending champion, Grant Wesley. Grant, Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got me?
Oh, yeah, I got you.
Oh, man, I'd have to go back and I'd have to do a lot of research, but I don't think here in the Tally Challenge we've had a driver be as dominant during the playoffs as yourself. 4 playoff races, including tonight, and you've been to victory lane in 3 of them. May have been 4, but you weren't here last week, so we'll never know. But you were in a must-win situation since you weren't on the grid last week. Did what you had to do to be the first one there to the start-finish line. It was a long road to get there, though. You end up seeing you at the front. We saw you fall to the back. You had to avoid some wrecks. Describe everything that happened here in this race, because we saw from the spectator point of view. I can only imagine what it was like in the driver's seat as far as all that pressure.
Yeah, I didn't exactly get the random draw to start the race that I was hoping for. I started 24th, I think it was, and the first 12 laps, I think we had 2 different sets of cautions, and I was able to, by the end of lap 12, find myself in the lead. Everything was great. And then it all went south. We had a little mishap on the backstretch, and a few cars came across the track and hit me in the door, and I spun to the inside. So I had to start all over. Yeah, then, we had some green flag pit stops at the end. We got ourselves in position there. I had an 8-truck breakaway. I think we had a lap truck or 2 in the mix. Things were looking good out front for the final 5 laps. Then, coming to the tri-oval, I want to apologize to Bob Seminara. I was in a must-win situation going in there. I seen we were door to door. I knew that he was just a tick faster. I wasn't going to win the race if I didn't do something. We were door to door, so I I moved up a lane, and which moved him up, and it's a really questionable situation. So I'm holding my breath until after the review's done. But it looks like to me that Donnie, he didn't lift. He got into the back of Bob, and there's a spark that comes off the back of Bob's truck before he gets out of shape. So I think that's what caused that. I think the contact between me and Bob was racing. I think we were squared up pretty good whenever I made that move. So I don't think that was an issue. But like I said, nothing's official until it's official. So I just want to apologize to Bob. I know he's mad. He showed his displeasure there after the race in turn one. That's all right. I'll just have to make it up to him.
So as things stand right now, it's yourself, Jeremy Jeffries, Seminara, and Brian Schilling heading into the Final Four battle next week. All four of you finished up inside the top six here tonight. Now, we know that it's not a win scenario, a must-win situation, really, in terms of the finale. It's the highest finisher of the four. Of course, last season, you ended up finishing fourth to be able to pick up the championship. But with the fact that your competition finished with you up close inside of the top five, or at least the top six, are you feeling like you have to treat next week as a must-win situation, especially with the fact that now it kind of seems like all four of you are on a level playing field in terms of confidence, in terms of momentum going into that championship battle?
Yeah, I mean the final race, it always feels like it's a must-win. It's always a pretty stout group. Who'd you say this other three drivers were?
As far as I'm aware, it's going to be yourself, Jeremy Jeffries, Bob Seminara, and Brian Schilling.
Oh yeah, those guys. Yeah, they were all right there. So I expect to see the same thing next week. It's going to be a pretty exciting finish for sure.
Now, you talked about not really getting the luck of the random draw here this week. We ended up hearing Seminara and Jeremy Jeffries kind of comment on that as well in looking ahead to next week. How much is that going to play into your early strategy, especially in next week's finale? Because we saw a couple of drivers here tonight that also didn't really get the luck of the draw in terms of the random qualifying, and they got caught up in early wrecks.
So yeah, I mean, assuming everything's kosher and I transfer, um, next week will be a different race for sure. You'll have to play it safe, especially if you start in the back. I mean, I'd be a guy that would probably run the inside line for at least first 10, 15 laps. And then as you get closer to a pit stop, then I'd move up and try to make up some track position before we pit, and then hopefully make up some really good track position on that hot pitting. So that would be my strategy. But yeah, definitely have to play it smarter, and then just try to put yourself in a good position towards the end and just see where you're at, and hope it all turns out good.
Well, Grant, fourth win on the season, third win here during the playoffs, and advancing into the Final Four to try and go for back-to-back championships. Going to be a lot of fun to watch this storyline heading into next week. Congratulations on the victory. And before we let you go, we're handing the mic over to you for some victory lane. Thank you, sponsors, and shoutouts.
Yeah, like I said, I just want to apologize. I hate whenever races in and team speaks quiet. We're all here to have fun, and so yeah, I just hate that. But yeah, I'd like to thank all the drivers that show up here. The fields are awesome. The racing's tight. I love racing against these guys. I'd like to thank you, Seth. You were kind of a lone soldier tonight. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to watching this broadcast back. FRN, thank you. I'd like to thank the admins here, Josh, Wiley, and Tim. Thank the owners, Sean Prime and David Cannon, for giving us such a great place to race. I'd like to thank my teammates at XFM, my friends and family for watching, and my girlfriend, Brittany.
He came into tonight in a must-win situation. He got the deal done. Grant Wesley will move on next week to defend his title. Good luck with that, Grant. Congratulations on the win here tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Seth.
And that is going to conclude our coverage here this evening. We knew it was going to be crazy. We knew it was going to be close. But did we know how close? I don't think so. It was a nail-biter right down to the end, not just for the race victory, but also for who was going to advance into the Final Four. Again, I've gotten the point standings in. They are pending admin review of what happened on the final lap. But as things stand right now, the Final Four that would advance next week, Jeremy Jeffries with his victory last week, Grant Wesley with his victory here tonight, they would be joined by Bob Seminara and Brian Schilling, who would make it in via points. Those two were 3 points ahead of Rodney Sullins. Sullins was 2 points ahead of Chuck McClure. So, as things stand right now, the final four that I told you are based off of if Grant Wesley keeps the victory. If it is deemed that he does not get the victory and the win is given to Bob Seminara, that would move Grant Wesley out and move Rodney Sullins in. But again, it's all based off of admin review, and we're not going to know the results of that until we get ready to grid up next week. So, tentatively, your final four drivers are Grant Wesley, Jeremy Jeffries, Bob Seminara, and Brian Schilling. Best of luck to those drivers. They've had an incredible playoffs. They've had to overcome a lot of different scenarios, and now a championship hangs in the balance for three of them. They're looking for another championship. For Jeremy Jeffries, he's still looking for his first. So certainly, while you wouldn't necessarily think it, in terms of statistics, Jeremy Jeffries is heading into this season finale as the underdog. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. I appreciate everybody joining me here tonight. Next week, we'll have Michael Norman hopefully back in the booth to be able to bring you guys the season finale with the championship hanging in the balance. But until then, if you guys enjoyed this broadcast, consider giving this video a like, subscribe to the Flatout Racing Network, and I will see you guys next week. I've been Seth Cole. You've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network. Have a great Thursday night, everybody.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.